Okay, so I think we are off to a Gremlin-free live stream. It is November the 18th, 2024, and many of you may have already received the news, but I woke up, I guess, inspired the other night to contact YouTube and ask them to restore all of my old channels, the ones that had been taken down wrongfully. And I wasn't able to get them all turned on at any point for the last 5 or 6 years, and so I kind of gave up on it. But I woke up and I decided to do a bunch of appeals, and I said, I promise I won't traffic in misinformation anymore. And of course my fingers were crossed, but they couldn't see that. And sure enough, one by one, my old channels have been coming back on. One of them had 550 subs, but most interesting and surprisingly, the original, the OG Infinite Plane Society website, the very first one, channel number 1 has been reinstated, and that one has 5,500 subs and 300 videos, which are all on private by default, and they gave me one warning. They actually removed a video that said Eric Dubé is a Nazi. They called it hate speech, and I appealed it, and they didn't give it back. But it's strike free, and I intend to keep it that way. So what I'm going to do is carefully parse those 300 videos and release them as I can. I have some interviews with world's greatest daredevil, Mad Mike Hughes. We have some events that we did. I have a lot of footage, and I will be making that all available on all the channels once I have vetted it to make sure that we don't self-sabotage. No more foot bullets. So we're active on 3 different channels, and the objective here is to coalesce all of the think tankers, past and present, as we move into this future unknown, the parallel media. And it's going to be mainly just people who have figured out the big lies and how the thing works, and who aren't caught up in the political horseshoe. And I know there's at least 10,000 of us conservatively, but I've been doing some interviews, meeting with people like Bach Precision, doing a lot of cross-marketing, cross-pollination of ideas, and combining our audiences. So it's just perfect timing that this has been facilitated. And if you comment, you will get a wrench. So we are joined by Jungle Jim, Green Smoke, Marcus, Ted Striker 2112, Cubstar, Greg W, Patricia Steer, Sasha, Isaac Young, welcome back. And I've technically never left, but we have had about 150 channels between number 1 and the present one. Joined by Armin Ree, Lean Dion, Roxy W, and look, Thirst for Truth, ears up, thanks for joining. And you know what's going to happen is a lot of people who are cut off are going to join, and it's just going to likely expand the think tank, and we'll pick up, I think, where we left off. But this was the one that, again, was the number 1 channel, and it had been taken down because of trolls flagging the content. And the last video was me and a couple of others on a beach in Santa Barbara. And then after that, it was taken down, but we're back on. So see, points of interest for November the 18th. In fact, before we get any further, I did have a video earmarked. This is a short video put together by someone who attended the first art event we did called Globe Exit. And I had made a globe pinata, probably better than the one that NASA uses as a background when they're filming the ISS. But we filled it up with red pills, which are these candies, technically called hot tamales, as well as t-shirts and other items. But this is a short video from that first gathering, which was in July of 2017.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum.
This is a historic event. We're inaugurating the whole Globe Exit. We're opting out of the spinning ball model. And if you're not a believer in this cult, why should you have to tithe? You don't have a carbon footprint, you're opting out of it. Nothing to worry about. You don't have to recycle. You shouldn't be obliged to spend money on propaganda meant to warp the minds of the kids. ISS, these government movies, you can opt out of that too. We're going to figure it out. If the Amish could get out of Obamacare, what can flat earthers get out of it? And we're going to find out.
That's some good stuff right there.
All right. Interesting day. I remember I confronted a group of quote normies, and we had a very unproductive conversation about a certain school shooting, and they were quivering. They were so mad. Joined by Flat Earth Revolution. Thank you for joining, Jennifer Reeves. Yes, Angst G. Last night was strange. We were somewhat sabotaged. We weren't able to get onto YouTube. It was like they unleashed all these channels, and then for some reason my stream keys weren't connecting. I thought it was because I didn't pay my restream bill, but that wasn't it. It was gremlins. But we're back on. Joined by Green, Smoke, Messianic Charlatan, Wage, Slave, Uranus. Any other aliens in the chat tonight asking for a friend? And Mazel. All right, this is great. And one of the nice thing about these videos here is that the comments go way back. So I'm seeing people who hate my guts now. And I'm able to, see them giving me heart emojis, and I'm able to say hello from 2024. But yeah, 7 years ago. So I've been going through and been messaging people, seeing who's still alive and who isn't, who hasn't sold out, who hasn't joined the dark side, who hasn't prematurely left this side because they weren't able to get the answers. But anyway, this is great. So again, you're likely going to be getting messages in your inbox letting you know about these channels if you were subscribed in the past. And if you have a wrench, I was live a little while ago testing it out. Copacetic was in there. That wrench is about 7 years old. If you could somehow make it into an NFT, it would be worth something. All right, let's see here. What's up, Tom Smith, Fuzzy Bush Monk, Lean Pirate, and I'll be opening up phones tonight as well. So points of interest, we got our channels back on. OG YouTube channel resurrected. Deadpool is a flurf. And then Trump's going to declare an emergency for deportation. And I'm just bringing that up because that is Trump entering his full-blown Biff Tannen phase, which is coming. Flat Revolution, yes. Glad to see you. I was with you from the beginning. Well, isn't it crazy that there are people who just thought we stopped? That's how big the internet is. You can get lost just like that. And we never really stopped. If anything, we doubled down and just got increasingly marginalized as they turned this whole thing against us. So there's this episode, this movie called Deadpool and Wolverine. Now, I haven't watched these. However, somebody remarked that he makes this comment that Deadpool scoffs at the idea of planets. So I guess that makes him a flat earther. I don't know exactly if that qualifies, but it's there, so I'll find that clip. And I've been doing some research, and I came across a couple of very interesting things for those of you who are interested or curious about this idea of magic and media intersecting. And I don't mean in a good way. I'm not talking about movie magic. I'm talking about in a creepy black magic mind control kind of way. And I found a blog called People of the Black Circle because I was researching Ted Kaczynski. Because I recall there was some predictive / concurrent programming with the Unabomber and the Jurassic Park movie. And I found an article that discussed this, and along with it, an explanation for the darker side of PSYOPs. So let me go ahead and first bring up what it says about Ted Kaczynski, and then we'll go from there. This is from a blog that I found today. Okay, here we go. So the 1993 Unabomber sent 2 package bombs in the same week that Jurassic Park premiered in theaters. The movie focused on the impact of 2 advanced technologies, genetic engineering and parallel computing. The first package exploded on June 22nd in the hands of a University of California geneticist, Charles Epstein. 2 days later, Yale University computer scientist David Geltner was bombed. Both were seriously injured. And his magnum opus is the previously cited Mirror Worlds, Oxford Press 91, detailing a process for counterfeiting the natural world. So he had connected these bombings with the themes in the movie. And then the second part, and there was someone here, and I thank you for this. I'm so relieved. He said there's no such thing as magic. Yeah, when we say magic, what do you actually mean? I go by mostly, I think, Arthur C. Clarke. Any sufficiently developed technology is indistinguishable from magic. We're just talking about something that is, at this point, unexplained, maybe even out of our purview. We don't even see it, but allows the person who's executing it to somehow subvert the will of the other. We're talking about manipulation on one level, propaganda. These things would probably fall into the purview of, quote, lesser magic. But then there are occult ceremonial aspects, culty stuff. And, you can say there's no such thing, but there's a lot of literature on it. And whether or not you believe in it is immaterial. It exists. But the overlapping of weird occultism and psyops is a interesting kind of a side topic here. So here's a article from Michael Hoffman. He's talking about something he calls invoking catastrophe. In the New Jersey admin bombing of Thomas Mosser in New Jersey, the Unabomber used the alias H.C. Wickle. The son of Sam used Wicked King Wicker, and the roots of Wicker and Wickle is Wick, which is in turn derivative of an old English word Wicca, meaning wizard, or the feminine Wicca for witch. So he really gets into the names and the etymology. And this is the individual who's known for, publishing the work of James Shelby Downard, like King Killed 33. But he goes on to talk about what he calls the twilight or cant language of the cryptopsy. And he says, this would seem to be signaling to occult initiates and those who understand it that the attack was part of a symbolic process. The occult crimes, the objective is not linear, that is to say, not solely bound to the achievement of the immediate effects of the attack, but may in fact be part of a larger symbolic ritual magnified by the power of electronic media for the purpose of alchemically processing the subconscious group mind of the masses. Now, if you've looked into the theory behind sigil magic as it's practiced, and again, we're not attributing objective reality to this. Some people believe in prayer, some people believe in the law of attraction, but we're talking about well-documented, well-understood methodologies in practice by various magical philosophies. And one of the more common examples would be sigil magic. And the concept here is that in order to tap into one's latent occult powers, one has to bypass the censoring process of the conscious mind, which is rational and bound to the laws of physics that cannot suspend disbelief so readily. And magical ritual is largely the process of breaking the tyranny of the rational mind. It is a very irrational thing if you think about it. But what the concept here is getting to, this idea that your subconscious can be targeted without your awareness, that in order for this process to work, one doesn't have to be the one in control of it. It can be done to you, more or less, that you're, according to the theory and practice of magic as it's done today, you're just a matrix battery in someone else's big ceremony. So it goes on to say, if we are observing a ritual working, we should be looking for relevant synchronicities or coincidences that have meaning in the days following the Unabomber's explosive attacks, which would form a pattern on the hypothesis that his bombing is the introit to a kind of public subliminal black mass that plays for days. Consciously, we don't apprehend the connections, but our subconscious does, and it is the subconscious being addressed in occult ritual in a process CIA behavioral scientist Dr. Cameron termed, quote, psychic driving. And like other group mind imprinting, such as the Son of Sam series, the Unabomber has a high media profile as a communicator and having a message for the masses. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but this is just one particular take that might explain what's going on with regard to the occult undertones of the various psyops that are really undeniable. I mean, obviously you can see the scripting. You can see the various ways they borrow from movies, from myths, but the more arcane stuff, the esoteric, the stuff that people who study gematria pick up on, there's a meaning to it, and we've been working on unpacking this. So whether or not you believe that synchronicities exist, that anything has meaning, or that the human will in any way has any kind of effect on what follows moment to moment, whether or not you believe that, it does seem to be something believed by the people who are more or less running the show. Yes, Alan Smith, you caught me live. MJR says time for more deprogramming. Ears up. Thank you for joining. Says space junk. Yeah, Lean Dion, the Nipsey era channel had 12,000 subs. That's the one I'm trying to get back up. But I'm actually glad we have this one. This one has the original subscribers. The title of tonight's live stream is This Paradigm is Not Going to Shift Itself. And I was thinking about this because we were comparing the 4 different explanations for predictive programming, and our understanding of it has evolved with time. And looking at it objectively, I think we're all coming to the agreement that this metascript explanation perfectly explains the meaning, the real purpose of fake news, and how fake news results in fake history and what that actually means, big picture-wise. And moreover, how the predictive and concurrent programming fits into the big picture and who's behind it. And it's a very important bit of information, because if you don't have that, then you never quite get out of the closed system, the closed informational system of the world stage. Ollie Goering says the collab between IPS and Bach precision is too dangerous and paradigm shifting, maybe. Well, I think it's time. I think a lot of us are done with Trutherville. I mean, look at Trutherville. It's a disaster. You got Q Street with all the mental addicts. Most of them are now in the GOP. And then they're flooded with all kinds of operatives, limited hangout types. And you're automatically smeared in all kinds of ways. They used to call you conspiracy theorists. Now they call you conspiracists. And I think it's important to get away from that whole group because, by and large, it's highly subjective. And there's very low standards of evidence. People make up stuff. They lie to each other. They worship JFK. Trutherville is a disaster. I thought Woketown was bad. So I figured this is the time that we quarantine. And the quarantine means that instead of being part of the alt media ecosystem, we actually branch off into the parallel media, which means skeptical, which is fundamentally different. Both mainstream and alternative are passive news consumers. They don't have any kind of processing. They just automatically believe. The auto-believer. And we need to organize on the premise of being auto-hoaxers, of being skeptics. And all we're doing is we're applying skepticism toward media conceived as a whole. What's up, 1-800-SHED-DOG? Says, I hope one day people make a film about Osmond and Tommy Wiseau from The Room movie called Disaster Artist. Haven't seen it. Mobius Trip, congratulations on the channel recovery. Yeah, it was completely on the random. I woke up and I don't hear voices, but I am compelled at times, and sometimes it's kind of eerie. And I woke up thinking I should go appeal all my old channels. Never occurred to me before. Why would they let them go? And as I started doing it, I started making my appeals. I started making these really silly promises, like I promised not to traffic in misinformation. And I didn't think it would be serious, but then a few hours later, one by one, they started opening my channels. Alan Smith says, Tim, would now be a good time to meet and speak with Dr. Shiva? I'd go speak to him on his channel. I don't want to self-sabotage this channel, and his views are probably banned. I wouldn't be surprised. We'll probably have to go to, I guess, Rumble. But yeah, Dr. Shiva was running for office, and he's certainly an outsider. He called out Musk and all the hypocrites who worship Musk, which is good to hear, because this is why I said I was voting for Harris. I said I'm voting for Harris because I don't believe in voting, but non-voter participation is in fact a position that is considered valid. And I don't want to have a valid position because I don't believe in the whole thing. I want to throw away my vote as a protest against the lockstep conspiracy theorists who all vote GOP, who all vote Republican. So in order to make a point, I said, I'm not going to participate in this thing. I'm not going to vote for Trump or Elon Musk. So I have a real outsider position, and I see Dr. Shiva as someone who certainly has an outsider position. Lucid Streams, all these channels are fine. I'm not really sure if I have a preference for which one you listen on, because I'm going to be streaming on all of them. I'm just hoping that over the course of the next few days, this one brings back a lot of the old listeners or original listeners. And I'm going to be downloading these videos and uploading them once I've gone through. So we have 300 videos to parse. Ted Stryker says the channel appeals may have something to do with the trial. Yeah, it could be. It could really be. It might even be the fact that so much time has elapsed that the people who are contracted to maintain this censorship, all these video flaggers and whatnot, have been fired. Who knows? But whatever it is, I just had this compulsion to awaken these channels. Plus, I had gone to bed thinking about how do we coalesce all the people who are. It was after I talked to Bach Precision. I was making an effort to really market this demographic. It has to be self-aware. It has to be a self-aware demographic that aren't truthers, that aren't the group that the media is constantly impugning. We're not Alex Jones clones, but rather we're completely separate and distinct. Okay, let's continue. What's up, Pippi Langstroth? Yeah, so we're on multiple channels, but you could just go to ips.monster and just pick one. This one's likely going to be the permanent one I use, depending on how many people jump on. That's a good question. Out of 5,500 people, how many are still active YouTubers? Okay, so we were talking about invoking catastrophe, just some strange arcana. Let me play a clip here. This is Dan Aykroyd in the movie Sneakers, where he's talking about the cameras that NASA used when they faked Apollo 11.
Okay, boss. This LTX-71 concealable mic is part of the same system that NASA used when they faked the Apollo moon landings. Had the astronauts broadcast around the world from a soundstage at Norton Air Force Base in San Bernardino.
The astronauts broadcast from Norton Air Force Base in San Bernardino, California.
So work for them. Shouldn't give us any problems.
What was it that Ukraine Vids used to say? Truth in movies, lies in the news. And that's certainly true. And that's probably structural. That they tell you the truth in the movies and lies in the news because they're intentionally conflating real and fake. They merge the movie world with the news media. And the constant vacillating between the two is what keeps us in our dream state. And I'm pretty sure that when they're blatantly honest in movies and they lie in the news, it's part of the great mind F. Mass cognitive dissonance. And you know where you can fix that. There is such a thing as cognitive harmony, which means that your internal map of the world matches what you live in. And that is on the other side of the screen. Okay, moving on. Oh, Ukraine Vids. I'm sorry, Russian Vids. He had changed it to Ukraine Vids in support of Zelensky. If you're familiar with him. Then he changed it to RV Vids, and he started driving around in an RV just spreading the truth from his megaphone. Or that might have been an episode of South Pole. I gotta check. I want to point out that the IPS is the only standard bearer for applied skepticism directed toward media conceived as a monolith. There are millions and millions of people looking for something more to explain the discrepancies between the televised version and the real thing, but they don't know that their internal model has been turned into a Truman Show. They're not the director, and that is a problem. Got a message here in our Gilded from Cupstar, who's watching the new Dune, and I like Dune. I haven't seen the original. I like the whole Dune universe, and Frank Herbert is rather incredible as a writer and as a thinker. So here's a quote from the Dune Messiah, and this is what I think when I look at Normieville, when I look at truthers, when I look at wokers, when I look at the people who are in the box. They are not mad. They are trained to believe, not to know. Belief can be manipulated. Only knowledge is dangerous. And lately we've been spending a lot of time talking about the subjective world of competing belief systems that all coexist in the dark, divorced from objectivity, because there is none. There's a little bit of objectivity, at the top of the capstone level, but even the programmers are themselves highly programmed by necessity. It wouldn't be the case that the people who run the shows are all in the know about all the various deceptions, the big picture. Only we have that privileged information. And we didn't have to take any blood oaths, did we? We didn't have to go through any kind of compromising ordeals. We just stepped back a little bit from the screen. All right, moving on. Talking about Frank Herbert. They are not mad. They're trained to believe. And I'm happy to say, if you believe something, you're welcome to it. Some people want to believe in chemtrails. They want to believe in chupacabras and 5G towers. And I just want to say you have to separate these beliefs that you can't test and verify from what you know. Just like you can't say you remember something if you really don't. If you can't actually retrieve that information, if you aren't really an authentic source. And this was one of my critiques of the Mandela effect conspiracy theory, which died out a couple years ago. But I used to ask the believers who would say, everybody knows Timmy fell down the well. Well, everybody knows automatically. The argument's gone. You don't have to even address it. However, just go along with it. If everybody knows Timmy fell down the well, how did they get him out? And not one Mandela effectee has ever been able to answer the question of how they took him out of the well. Because they would have had to have made it up, because he wasn't in the well. So these aren't real memories. It's almost like a filing cabinet in their mind labeled something, but there's nothing inside. This is the false memory that is created through the process of asking the question itself, which serves as a prompt, a bit of interference, what's actually called the misinformation effect. All right, thank you for feeding the Kraken thirst for truth. We appreciate your support and your participation, as always. Okay, let's see. Leo Pirate says, similar to how you said Mr. E said Trump gave birth to Barron, a fake memory. I didn't say Mr. E said Trump gave birth to Barron, but I'm saying that the people who say that all presidents have been women and that Harris would have been the first male president, like the people who think everything's inverted are kind of stuck with trying to explain the families. So you're saying that Melania couldn't have given birth to those children, which means Trump did. So then I start looking at the ages. And I'm like, I don't think a 60-year-old Donald Trump could have given birth to that Nephilim child. I don't believe it. I just don't. And it's somewhat in the realm of possibility, but the age of 60, I don't know. That's tricky. And so then instead of responding to this obvious flaw in their model, they say to me, oh no, these are surrogates. Okay, so now your theory isn't only that everybody's the opposite, but that everybody has a fake family. It's all made up. Like, what is their actual theory? What is your coherent view on this thing that you can't even prove? And Mr. E is anonymous, and he spends way too much time staring at celebrity crotches and Adonis belts or whatever he calls it. And honestly, he sounds like he enjoys his work, and I have no problem with that. But I also think that the whole idea is just misinformation, and it's gaslighting. You're being gaslit with pseudoscience, with phrenology, and a real pathetic attempt at forensic anthropology. Ask any one of these individuals which skull they're using for their overlays, and they'll just say a skull. I grabbed it off of Google Images. It's like, that's not really good enough. I was in Fort Lee, Virginia at their Pierce Mortuary College when I was 92 Mike, where you learn how to identify human remains. And there are classifications for skulls that, you have different, Caucasoid, Mongoloid, you have all these different categorizations. I mean, you may not like the terminology, but ultimately we're talking about skeletal structure here. So while they claim to be examining skeletal structures, they don't actually have a rigid methodology. And it's one of these things where if your only tool is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And Mr. E walks around with a big hammer, and everything's a nail. Leo Pirate says, I think the anonymous can be a red flag, but it's not proof of controlled opposition. It's highly questionable. And what's worse is that if you really had some information that Yeah, trunk froze her eggs. Right. That's what I mean. It's a joke. It's like, it's tabloid-esque at best. But here's the thing. I doxed one of the main promulgators of this. And online, you would think, okay, this is a Christian conservative in some kind of a moral panic. And she's convinced that Sylvester Stallone's a woman and all these strange claims. But she's got this huge following. Well, anyway, I called her out on her inconsistencies. And then she accused me of being one of them. I'm like, what? Like, I'm fine with that. If you want to believe that, it doesn't hurt my feelings. I could care less. But that was meant to like scare me or drive me off. But I thought if this person was serious, they wouldn't just flippantly make claims like this. So I looked into this person and I was able to dox them. Turns out this person is not the person they pretend to be, but is in fact a liberal, communist, Bernie Sanders supporting professor at some community college in Iowa, pretending to be a Christian conservative, conspiracy theorist. So in other words, I see all these dupes on X who are just following a bunch of high-profile anonymous accounts blindly. So I don't buy into it, exactly like Donnie Darkened. Donnie Darken makes a huge account, big account, huge. He's a huge following, claiming Donald Trump's the Antichrist. He gets on Tim Pool. And then he's exposed as being a pro-Trump guy who's kind of got this double life as an anti-Trump guy, making money on both sides. So I don't trust anybody anonymous that don't test their own claims, and they spread their ideas as more or less rumors. There's no substance to it. So I kind of just leave it behind. Anybody who promulgates that can only say this. They can only say, I believe this, or I want to believe this. That's the only thing they can say. But I just wave my Hitchens razor at them, which is anything asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. And you save yourself a lot of time. You know, I hate the whole thing of, I'm just asking questions. Like, what are they spraying? I'm just asking questions. What's in the thing? Just asking questions. How about you come back to us when you have answers? Just asking questions is lazy. It's actually childish. It's what toddlers do. If you're a grown-up in the age of information and you know how to Google, then you shouldn't just be asking questions. And this became a thing with QAnon, which is basically the Riddler. Q asking questions. He never gives you any answers. He never says, this is going to happen on this date. It's always cryptic and vague so you can read anything into it. You know, there are more Q drops than Bible verses. And the cult of JFK worship is going strong. And speaking of which, on 11/22, a couple of movies are coming out that are worth noting, Gladiator 2, but there's an album, Marilyn Manson, One Assassination Under God. One Assassination Under God. And why this is significant, JFK's birthday, Marilyn Manson, is that Marilyn Manson did a video in 1999, and the video was postponed because JFK Jr. died. And in this video, JFK was the second coming of Christ. And Marilyn Manson played JFK being assassinated. Then they had JFK on a cross. They had his picture. And then the video this is based on a script for a movie he never made called Hollywood. And he said, Manson said, that in this script, it was about the second coming being JFK and he gets killed. So the world's waiting for the third Jesus, which would presumably have been JFK Jr. But JFK Jr. died right as the movie came out, as the video came out, and Manson issued something of an apology for the curious timing, and he said it wasn't intentional, of Coma White. So the video is called Coma White. It was with Rose McGowan, and to be honest, her name Rose is highly significant in the context of this narrative of JFK as Christ. But yeah, Manson as President Kennedy, McGowan as Jacqueline Kennedy, other bands as Secret Service. But when it was released, it sparked controversy, and it explains here that the timing of it with JFK Jr.'s death was unanticipated, as though you could have planned for such a thing. Manson said the script had the idea there were two previous Christs, Jesus and JFK, and they were waiting for the savior, the third one, who would be President White. The video recreates the assassination of John F. Kennedy. He wears a suit. Goes on to say, moments from the Zapruder film, you have Jacqueline Kennedy climbing on the car. At one point, he climbs on a cross and he's paraded through the streets. And then finally it says, the video garnered considerable controversy and the release was delayed because the band was accused of inspiring the Columbine School Massacre, and then it was delayed again because of the death of JFK Jr. Manson issued a statement through his publicist that said, little did I know the tragedy of Columbine or the accidental death of JFK Jr. would follow. This was not meant to be a mockery of Christ and JFK. Unreal. But this is, again, I'm bringing it up because this is literally what the QAnons believe 20 years before they even existed. And then, moreover, his next album about an assassination comes out in just a few days. David Pecker says Manson never saw a prison cell. If you're talking about Charles Manson, no, I don't think so. MJR says, thank you for your service. Yeah, I appreciate that. You know, I had good intentions, but I was horribly, obviously, naive and stuff. But I think it's fascinating to look at the different worldviews that we have. And it's notable that the military consists of auto believers by default. I don't think you could be a media skeptic at the level that we practice here and function in that environment. It'd be very problematic, I would imagine. Because we're actually challenging the authority at a very deep level or the integrity of it. Like, I would even contest the idea that we have governments, plural. Like, I would actually say that we have a government, it's monolithic, and it spans the entire world. And it's only divided as a form of gaming the system to keep us in a constant state of info war. I really appreciate the support there, Flat Earth Revolution. And yeah, we're accelerating. You know, we never stopped. We hit a few road bumps. I'm in the middle of litigation with YouTube and stalkers, etc. But we are in the process of what I call auto hoax accelerationism. So you're back at a really good time. But I can point out from experience that I was brainwashed into believing in nukes and fallout and all this stuff. And I think that might be the purpose of the military. Not to actually do the things they're trained for, but to make sure everybody believes that these scenarios are even a possibility and we need to be protected. And you're not allowed to have the Geiger counter. It's contraband. Well, someone gets a hold of one and he finds out there's no radiation, that everyone is locked down under a false premise. Now, that could never happen in real life, but it's an interesting story to consider. I mean, Leo Pirate says, William Cooper wrote in his book that the reason he got as far as he did in naval intelligence was because he was part of DeMolay. Yeah, William Cooper went up to Q clearance. And he did suggest that his DeMolay, Jacques DeMolay, burned at the stake, that was his in. It's the Masonic youth group. That might have been the case. I met a lot of Masons when I was in the Army. I didn't know what it was, but I saw the bumper stickers, and then I overheard a conversation one day. It was Sergeant George was passed over for his attempt at getting Master Sergeant or something, and he said, 16 years stuck at as an E6, and I can't get promoted because I don't belong to the right club. And my interest was piqued. I'm like, what club is he talking about? And I kind of followed up on it, and I put a few pieces together, did a little research, and I learned about a highly influential Prince Hall Freemasons. And then my curiosity is like, I'm not content to get all my information secondhand, and so I went ahead and I visited the Scottish Rite Temple in El Paso, which is this old building with these two sphinxes out in front. And I just kind of walked in like I owned the place. And the gentleman there actually gave me a tour. I looked through their books. They took me to the second floor. They had the lodge room. Very interesting place. And they were more than happy to take me around, which says something too about a lot of truthers who do not do their due diligence. Like, what is stopping you? Fear? The ice wall? Like, there really aren't any barriers. And if there are barriers, well, then you can address them. But I think mostly it's in your head. My audio is going in and out. Good to know. Leo Pirate says, there's a lot of Mormons in the Air Force. The Mormon Masonic connection is openly admitted. Yeah, well, it's on their underwear. It's in their oaths. It's in the terminology. The idea of elders, for example. Anytime I hear elders, it suggests you're looking at something with a common source. I would even suggest that all the various religions are a hydra, and each expression is just one head, but ultimately it's the same body. And just to be clear, I don't think any religion's better than any other, so I hope no one gets offended. I think they're all equally valid or equally invalid, depending on how you look at it. Okay, I'm going to open up phones here shortly. I want to go through, we were talking about Frank Herbert Dune. So know your friends, your family, your neighbors, the people you run into every day, they're not mad. They're simply trained to act that way. As I've been saying, they've been given mind aids. Okay, let me get back to this. Cubstar is watching Dune, and he had this to say. I just started off the first episode of Dune Prophecy. It opens in the Butlerian Jihad and the creation of Bene Gesserit. The main plot kicks off 116 years after the end of the Great Machine Wars. Okay, so the 116. Okay. Is anyone else having audio issues? Let me know in the chat if you're having any issues with the audio. Yesterday was terrible. Yesterday we were inundated with gremlins, and it took a little while to get it flowing. By the way, I have some shirts available, as well as mugs and other items that all say, the paradigm is not going to shift on its own. The paradigm is not going to shift on its own. And I thought about this yesterday when we were talking about models for examining or understanding media. So, for example, the mainstreamers and the alt media are more or less passive. You can say that they're watching their sources and they're taking it all in. But there's no immediate, almost knee-jerk rejection, or rather pause of an examination and critical thinking about what they're taking in, because they trust their sources. And if you trust your sources that much, to the extent that you're very trusting and you're not fact-checking everything, I think you could argue that you might be a passive consumer of information, which makes sense. A lot of stuff you don't have to question. You're getting a weather report, or you're listening to traffic reports, or whatever it is. You don't need to be on guard. And I think then that this habit of trusting is exploited. And that's the main thing. It's through habit and tradition. And this is why I say that the government more or less gives us mind aids, that collectively we are encouraged to be passive consumers, which means trusting. It means faithful, having faith in media. The alternative is to be an active consumer of media, but obviously we don't all have the time to go through every news item every day and then source it, fact check it, and decide if it's real or not. Because every day we get at least 48 hours worth of news into our feeds, which doesn't leave us a lot of time to live if all we do is parse the information, just kicking to keep your head above water in the sea of irrelevance. But what we have done is we have come up with a number of heuristics, a number of axioms when it comes to your personal method of consuming news that can help you categorically reject certain types of claims, categorically ignore entire propositions based on how they're framed. Like a lot of people now are savvy to things like clickbait, rage bait, engagement bait, engagement farming. We saw these posts on X for like months. It was like, what do you see? And they post something. Eventually people got tired of it. But if you don't have a methodology for traveling through this mess, the thing is, you just get lost. There is no coherence to it. You can doom scroll your way into any fictional universe. Choose your own apocalypse. But the skeptic isn't bound by any sort of obligation to believe everything until proven false. So in other words, we can pretty much more or less rest comfortably on the fact that if something is real, it'll have evidence attending it, and they never present the evidence immediately. So you can already decide that you don't need to immediately emotionally respond to every news story. And we've been watching this election cycle and how programmed people are. And it's just memes. And they don't even care if it's true anymore. Like 1 minute they're saying the Hells Angels are traveling to Aurora, Colorado to fight off the Venezuelan gangs that have taken over apartments. Now, that never actually happened. None of that happened. There was a motorcycle rally going on in Colorado. I think it was it Greeley, Colorado? Just a motorcycle rally. It wasn't Hell's Angels. But people took videos of these motorcyclists, called them Hell's Angels, and claimed they were going to Aurora to fight for the American gangs so that their jobs don't get taken by Venezuelan gangs. Now, that story isn't true, never happened, and yet it was talked about on Joe Rogan as though it happened. It's completely subjective. And it also showed you the standards of evidence are super low. You know, a couple of years before this, we had, I think it was Jade Helm, but this idea that the National Guard was going to take over and they're going to put us into FEMA coffins. And I would see these videos of FEMA coffins. We'd see videos of tanks on trains. And the rumors would spread that everything's about to hit the fan. They're going to take the guns. We're all going to die. Well, it turns out that FEMA coffins don't exist. FEMA coffins are a hoax. I mean, that's, one important fact here. But another thing is that the annual National Guard drills that take about 2 weeks every year are predictable. And every year, truthers will film the National Guard movements and claim it's some kind of World War III Civil War scenario. Put a link in the chat. The original Infinite Plane Society channel is The Infinite Plane Society. And then another one is called Auto Hoaxer. Then we have Infinite Plane Radio and Infinite Plane Society. But the original one is The Infinite Plane Society. I put a link below. 1-900-SHED-DOG says, I think my account's hidden on the main channel. Sure. And if you want to, you can email me at infiniteplanesociety@gmail.com. If you want to specifically, or you don't have to email me, leave a comment. If you leave a comment, I can give you a wrench right there. If you email me, I can pull you out of the dungeon if you are trapped. I can't wait to go through it. Look at all the accounts of the people that we've banned in the past. All the bots. Okay, let's move on. We talked about the fleas that were passed off as UFOs. Look, there's 10,000 people commenting on this video of fleas, of fireflies. These are fireflies lit from the bottom by a flashlight that are being passed off as flying saucers at a high altitude, moving at impossible speeds and making impossible turns. And people are commenting in here that this is real. This is amazing. It's time. I believe. Take me. Because they want to believe so bad, they don't even think about it. Like, this is a classic example of self-deception, because the first 2 seconds and the final seconds show you little gnats floating around the side, but it's a hoax. It's fake. And the guy who uploaded it, Alien UFO Sightings, has tens of thousands of followers, is getting a ton of hits, and he's not bothering to tell his viewers, oh, by the way, this is fake. Like, what does that tell you? This is why we have left Trutherville. Their desire to believe has overridden their critical thinking faculties, and they're no longer objective observers. You cannot really trust them. You can't trust them as sources. Another one of my videos, this is again from the original channel, and I'm going through them one by one just to make sure that they're safe. In fact, I'm responding to comments 6 years after the fact. So here's Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole commenting back when he didn't hate me. Here is Nathan Oakley. Hello, Nathan. Are you still hung up on the whole space vacuum dome thingy? I mean, he's really deep into that. You can't have a pressure system without a lid, or whatever he was saying. The problem there is putting the model before the information. Lucid Stream says, can't even trust your own perception at times. It's really a matter of recognizing that optical illusions will fool you, and that's a huge part of it. Optical illusions. Like a magic show only works if you're in your seat and you're looking at it from the frame that the magician gives you. And the TV, the screen, provides a frame, but it's not enough information necessarily to debunk or even to believe something to be true. For the most part, people are low information believers. High on trust, low on information. So they don't have any kind of a intellectual high ground over media critics. So you should never feel bad for not believing. So when I was talking to Bach Precision the other day, I alluded to these very public occult rituals at the Super Bowls. And I wanted to just go ahead and substantiate that a little bit here and show you this is indeed a pattern. This is the Gnostic Catholic Mass. This is the super mystery Babylon, I guess the Super Bowl fertility rite. I mean, what are you going to call this? It's in front of the public. This is a mass. It's the Gnostic Catholic Mass. And I'm not going to get into the details of what these things actually mean as far as the Great Rite. You can look it up for yourself. But here's Rihanna in red, pregnant moon bump showing, descends from the sky like in the stars in the background, goddess imagery. But the red is what I'm drawing your attention to. And all of the dancers are in white. It's significant that the dancers are in white and they are male, and then she is in red. Next slide. The following Super Bowl, you have Alicia Keys, similarly dressed in red, and Usher in white. And not only is he in white, but he has a phoenix on his shirt, which is a Christ symbol. So you have the Christ Magdalene pairing, Isis, Osiris. This is the god, goddess. But the red and the white is how it's performed in the modern New Age Mass, the Thelemic cult. They call it the Scarlet Woman, the Scarlet Witch, the Babylon working we often reference, specifically refers to this. And then it's been announced that Kendrick Lamar is going to be performing at the next one. And here he is. And again, note the pattern. He's in white, and he has a crown of thorns. Obvious Christ reference. And the dancers are female. They are in red, and they're smearing blood on him, which is highly symbolic, because we're talking about blood in the sense of the Catholic Mass. We're talking about wine and bread, the blood and the flesh. The Gnostic concept of this has the goddess and the god equally represented here. But the goddess is represented by the chalice. Kendrick Lamar is performing a song here called Heart Part 5. And the heart in the playing cards is actually derived from the chalice, from the tarot. Just like the diamonds come from the pentacle, the clubs come from the staves, and the swords become spades. These represent the 4 seasons, the 4 suits, 4 seasons, 52 cards, 52 weeks. Add up all the numbers, you get 365. It's all based on the same set of symbols, and it all relates to the sun and sun worship and the sun incarnate, which is what he represents. So you have the god-goddess pairing. But this is going to be the 3rd Super Bowl in a row with the same ritual. So I'm not sure what he's going to do, but I decided to just do a quick search. Kendrick Lamar Super Bowl halftime show performer. And there's a commercial for it. And here's an article from GQ about it. And note what's right behind him. Look at the colors. And he's portrayed himself with this Christ symbolism in a few different ways. And it's all interconnected. But notice he's right in front of the red and the white. And I didn't know that was going to be there, but I assumed any kind of announcement is going to reiterate this theme. And we've been decoding Super Bowl performances for some time. It's also notable that it happens on the Sunday in February that you would consider Candlemas, in bulk, which means in milk. It's a sun worship thing where they're weaning the sun god. This is why Janet Jackson had the wardrobe malfunction, bare-breasted, sun on her breast, and then Justin Timberlake is the representative of the sun god. So I'm looking forward to the next Super Bowl. Thirst says hi, F-E-R. Pretty sure he's dead. I'll send him some messages, but I followed him on one of these sites like Spokio, where you can stalk people based on known email addresses. And he added some email address, he joined some social media, and I got a notification. So I figured out where he lived, and I was making arrangements to go pay a visit with some friends and create some content. And next thing I know, I get a notification of his death date. I haven't found his obituary yet. And I'm not happy about it. I want all of our enemies to live long enough to see what we do with this thing. Okay, continuing here. Flat Earth Revolution says, I believe Nathan passed away. I don't know. I don't think so. You're probably thinking of, there's Mac Parhar, Rob Skiba, Bob Nodal. Although some believe that Mac Parhar faked it. I don't know. Some think that Rob Skiba may have faked it, and I wouldn't be surprised, honestly. And that's not bad to say. Anybody who is, I think, in this arena is going to be accused of faking it. No one's going to believe it. Weirdly enough, today, I might have survived 2 assassination attempts, and I have a picture to prove it. I was driving somewhere, and as I'm going down Morris, and I'm coming up on Montgomery, the intersection, moments before I get there, like seconds before, there's an accident, and a truck just like mine was hit, and I had to go around this big mess. I had a detour. So then I stop at the dollar store to grab some items, and I get out, and I'm driving down the same street at another intersection 1 block up, and right there in the middle of an intersection, a truck that looks just like mine got hit, and the car that impacted it continued, and it knocked over a fire hydrant. So I thought, that's weird. In less than 10 minutes, I see 2 trucks that look like mine just get hit as they're passing through intersections. And I'm wondering, did somebody put out an order? Like, hey, he's going down this street, he's going to this destination, let's go ahead and activate something. And activate one of our MK Ultra killers, flip a switch, and then have them run this guy off the road. I don't know. Probably just a coincidence. I felt like I was in that movie, Final Destination. But yeah, 2 trucks just like mine getting hit like side by side. How many look like mine? White pickup trucks are pretty common, you could argue. But 2 accidents back to back on the same street, same corner, both hit by eastbound vehicles. Now, I'm not saying I believe in assassins that drive around and run people off the road. However, I was watching a movie a couple of days ago, and there's this scene where this character puts a neck brace on and a helmet. It's actually the movie Focus with Will Smith. So he and his girlfriend are trying to get away with a lot of stolen money, and the other guy has to stop them. And so he puts a neck brace on and a helmet, and he crashes into them. And then he takes off his helmet, he takes off his neck brace. His airbags, of course, were deployed. And then he pulls them out of the vehicle. So it's kind of funny is last night I was watching a movie where someone uses a vehicle deliberately to take somebody out and wears a helmet knowing what he's going to do. So I thought that's kind of funny, but that isn't what I'm saying happened. I'm just saying it's a coincidence. Does Goldfinch have a penguin voodoo doll? Yeah, that's what I mean. It sounds like witchcraft. It sounds like voodoo. It's just coincidences. I'm willing to say it's just coincidences. I mean, if you're that sophisticated to where you have drive-by assassins willing to crash their cars, they'd be a little more careful. Lucid Stream says, add a target decal on either side. MJR says, we won't find the origin of coincidence until we are in heaven. Right. Well, are there even coincidences? Well, technically, yes. But then there are significant coincidences. Then there are eerie coincidences. And then there are synchronicities. I happen to think that a lot of synchronistic messages or significant coincidences are the result of one's self. And that it is the aspect of the self that is not bound to the body and the here-now space-time, but the non-corporeal, non-incarnated aspect that might have a little more insight and possibly even creative control. Okay, let's move on here. Oh, it was JT33 this morning who said, Deadpool is a flat earther. And I did look into it, and he did scoff at the idea of planets. But who knows what that means? I'm not familiar enough with Deadpool to know. I actually have the clip.
Hey everybody, this is a little clip from Deadpool 2, and I hope this one works on YouTube. I hope I can upload this one, but just watch.
Can you turn off the music? You'll do no such thing. Why don't you just say it in an Indian accent? Once again, intolerance rears its ugly head. I am so sorry. It gets better.
Not a fucking racist, moron.
Tell it to Black.
Okay, this is again Deadpool, and he makes a reference to Black Tom, which some think is a Mandela effect, and here he is about to clown planets.
Black Tom, he was like a brother to me.
I'm with the old white guy on this one. That's a twist.
So what exactly do you do in the future anyway, huh? Some kind of soldier?
Yeah, something like that.
I was a soldier. Special forces. I bet 50 years from now we're best as buddies.
50 years from now.
Now, sorry, this clip is dragging on, but I'm getting to the point here. And here it is.
Planets.
Okay. I guess him scoffing at planets means he's a flat earther. Anyway, sorry about that. MJR says perception creates coincidence. That's an interesting question because there's a tendency by most to just either be just dismissive or to psychopathologize it. So if you're seeing coincidences, if you're experiencing meaningful events, you're either sick or you have some kind of logically fallacious approach to assessing the information that you get. And these things can be true. I think it was Ian Fleming who said, once is coincidence, twice is happenstance, three times is enemy action. And I'm kind of with him on that. That there's a need to distinguish between regular coincidences and then deeper levels or deeper explanations. And by deeper explanations, I mean things like, for example, did something happen as you were thinking about it? And did timing, or does timing play some kind of significant role in it? And I have many examples that are obviously subjective and anecdotal. However, having documented, observed, and thought about them, I've pretty much concluded that what we think of synchronicity is something that can be explained, not necessarily in mundane terms, but without reference to spirits or higher power or thinking that the universe or God is talking to you, but rather I think it's a function of our awareness that isn't necessarily confined or even framed by what we think of as the ego. Charming Anarchist said the same actor of Deadpool scoffed at the South Pole in a previous movie. Yeah, we'll have to put that together. Lucid Stream says, are you going to make non-live videos that are more structured and to the point? We do have plans to do IPR deep dives and research as I can afford it and invest into it. Yes, we have a lot of documentaries in progress, and I'd like to redo some of our older rudimentary documentaries. I certainly would. It's just very time consuming. So I'm thinking that if I can build this channel back up, perhaps it will become capable of financing more work. I mean, just to give people an idea, I raised a little bit of money doing the Auto Hoax Con, and after that, I invested that money into a camera person, and I was able to get the whole MAGA event covered. But, you know, things like that take a little bit of money. So as far as like making structured videos, I certainly could. In fact, I have a lot of them structured. I have a lot of them outlined. And I do have a lot of them that just aren't published. I was doing a series called Metascript Decodes. And I have dozens of those. I have a number of videos that show the construction of various mind maps where I explain or demonstrate these purposeful cycles that are being repeated, like 1968 overlapping 2020, 1969, 2021, in terms of the zeitgeist, and how the metascript does in fact follow patterns. It does in fact repeat. And then I'm also working on shorts. So if you've been following my main channel, I'm doing a lot of the IPS shorts. Like, for example, I uploaded one yesterday that shows the resemblance between the Riddler, Thomas Crooks, how the Riddler sings Ave Maria, and how at the second appearance at Butler, Pennsylvania, during the moment of silence, they had that exact song performed. So I am putting together a lot of things that people can, I guess, reference. Although my objective, again, is I'm not trying to reach Normieville. I don't want to oversimplify things or try to engage in the Socratic method and breadcrumb people, or in any way try to offer a sort of a belief system to people who are believers. Because this is not a belief system. I'm not telling people what to believe. I'm far more interested in people who've already figured out that you can know what's knowable and know why certain things aren't knowable and not accept them as true just because a lot of people believe them. All right, let's move on here. This is a bit of predictive programming from 2015. Take a look at this. This is pre-Q and pre-MAGA. What do you see? Okay, that's the male symbol, but it's cracked and it's pointing down. And this obviously means something about males in America today from the perspective of, I guess, the right in particular, you know, where we see the Nick Fuentes and the Andrew Tates, like what are they responding to that makes them feel like they have been emasculated? And then this also ties into Barbie feminism and how Ken remains just a nub, he remains just a doll, and she becomes a real woman. But then also, within this male symbol turned down that looks just like a Q, you have a sad individual with a red hat. And again, this is pre-MAGA, pre-Q. And so I would just put this in the annals of predictive programming. The Economist has plenty. And this is just one other example. So this is MAGA hat, Q, whatever this is, it's just indications of where things are going. The Economist is like, it's almost like an oracle. If you go through these various covers, they're worth unpacking. It's like tarot card divination. Read the future. Another one is is Time. The Atlantic has been pretty well represented with predictive programming as of late, and I'm frequently referencing the Atlantic. We all remember that on 9/11, Time magazine released this issue, Trump in Trouble, and it has him backing out of a sand pit. And this is just days after someone on his golf course planned to shoot him. And then, of course, you have the Atlantic just right before his ear was shot. We were looking at this and talking about it, where the Atlantic shows with, I think, specific detail here, exactly where Trump was going to get shot. And more recently, and I've made another post about this, the Atlantic released another piece that says, Trump won, now what? And as you'll see, this other cover that they just released is even more gruesome in its insinuation. This one looks like a post-mortem. Trump won, now what? The United States is about to become a different kind of country. But the IPS has been examining predictive programming so consistently, and we notice patterns. And if you think these are anomalies, then you're not paying attention to how frequent it is, to how pervasive it is. It's actually structural. It's intrinsic to what media is, because it's all one script, it's all foreshadowing, and there are certain observations that we've made that should lead us away from the wrong explanations for it. For example, 100% of fake events are preceded by predictive programming, which is, fake movies, books, fiction. But also, all of the predictive programming is followed up with fake events. These aren't real events that are ever forecast, that are ever prophesied. And that's a key point, because if they're fake events, then you can rule out the previous explanations for why it's being done. It's not wizards telling us bad things that they're going to do, trying to dodge karma, because they're not doing bad things. It's not the universe or God telling us, oh, this is going to happen, because God or the universe wouldn't try to drop hints to a small group of people about something fake without telling you it's fake, unless God works for the PSYOP entertainment complex, unless God's a liberal Democrat. Because if you look at another aspect to all of these various PSYOPs, there's always a political agenda attached. So if you just got here, the paradigm is not going to shift itself. That kind of just reflects the idea behind the auto-hoax accelerationism. If we don't maintain these standards, if we don't decide to be the objective perspective, the off-world stage, if we don't maintain that this is important to maintain as a distinct body, no one else is going to do it. There is no platform for media skeptics who are also recognizing that there is indeed a scripted, prefabricated history being implemented on the world stage daily. There isn't an organized body doing this, so it has to be us. So that's why I say the paradigm's not going to shift itself. Not that it's like we're trying to save the world or anything, but we are trying to preserve sanity, like an oasis, at least for ourselves. I mean, how many of us are there? How many of us are not apathetic, who don't want to put our heads in the sand, and are actually entertained by breaking down the propaganda matrix? Because I do have to point out that this is indeed, it's conspirataining, it's entertaining, it's edifying, it's educational. I argue that it's better to be an informed non-believer than a low information believer. But to know both, you have to know the different boxes so you don't alienate people. And then it's also nice to have a think tank like this we're all on the same sheet. We're not trying to convince people who are still trapped or boxed in. A lot of people are, to be honest though, and this is a great development, a lot of people are rightfully skeptical and willing to call things fake. They may not have the entire picture, but there is a healthy level of skepticism. But it just gets directed into what is just this cacophony, this morass, the sea of irrelevance they call it, where, you know, it's hard to make coherent sense of anything that's true if everything else that you're basing your worldview on is still flooded with false explanations. For example, you might notice that one or two events are fake, but if you're not looking at the totality of fakery, you're not really there. And false flag explanations have basically served to divert a lot of people away from arriving at the right conclusions. So we're the ones, I think, advocating cutting edge, the most correct explanation for what we are seeing. Exactly, Cope says, the propaganda is not going to auto-hoax itself. 1900 says, when are the dark IPS black hats going to be ordered? Well, we do have black wrenches. You see, right now we have the blue. Then we have the red, and those of you who are red know what that's about. And then we have the black wrenches. But to advance up through the ranks, to rise up above the Blue Wrench Lodge, you do have to be involved in the Meatverse. Out of the metaverse, above ground, the IPR Press Club is going to really serve to be a place for us to begin that part of the mission. Lucid Stream says, describe your ideal world. It's a good question. I don't know if I have enough time. And also, I'm not someone trying to wake up normies. I think we might be in a benevolent dictatorship. I don't have enough information. Like, we might be messing up a good thing. We might be perhaps removing something that allows the masses to maintain some semblance of sanity. Like, maybe it's really terrible out there. Like, whatever it is. Like the movie The Village with the monsters that keep everyone confined. But maybe the monsters are real. I tend not to think so, though. But personally, I'm of the opinion that we are treading into areas that we're not supposed to be in, that this is top secret, that nobody gets the security clearance to put all these different boxes together, because everything's compartmentalized. You got the fake terror attacks, you got the fake shootings, you got the fake space, you got all these aspects of fakery that are very compartmentalized. And we've taken the approach of looking at it from the world view, the big picture on down. So there's a lot of people who will say, well, Vegas was done by the deep state. No, you're wrong. Vegas wasn't done. There is no deep state. It was a movie. And then, of course, you have others who will be very suspicious about a lot of things on the ground, but then they still believe the big picture that NASA provides us. And the problem with that, and it's not about the shape of the world, but it's that our worldview is coming from one source, that it's not separate. And NASA, Elon Musk, the various space agencies, they're all on the same sheet. And that same sheet is putting us into Truman shows. And the Truman Show is in your head. It really is. It's your internal map of the world that they control. But if you've never considered it as a model and looked at it as just one option, you may never have any reason to question it. Like, what's so wrong with it? You know, what's wrong with normies? Aren't they blissful? Aren't they happy? Well, yeah, in a way they are, but they also are subject to manipulation, emotional manipulation, panics. They're subject to programming at any time. They're MK Ultra patients. We live in a global asylum, which is why I say there's no point in organizing. Resistance is futile. You cannot organize the patients to take over the hospital. All right, 1900 says, I like eating nachos, drinking beer, watching football, going to the gym. Am I basic enough? Yeah, I'm not opposed to that. I think a lot of truthers look down on normies because they're happy and entertained. And it's sort of like a religion looking at non-believers and condemning their lifestyle. But in a way, the normies, the blue pill, are somewhat in an enviable position. They're not any more urgent for them, but they're not awake by any stretch. So I don't wake them up. I don't disturb people. But the only ones who might even have an interest in exiting the box are the truthers. As misdirected as they are, at least they're still trying. Their instincts are correct. But as far as ideal world, I don't have an answer, but I do have a purpose here. And our purpose is to have this splintering in worldview and have an entire branch of media outside the control, outside of the assumptions and presuppositions of the mainstream and alternative. And then once we get our numbers, we have further objectives. But numbers first. Numbers are compelling. When people see the numbers and what comes of it, because there's something that's going to happen. And I hate to be too specific because I don't want to telegraph too much. I would prefer that we're underestimated until it's too late. And it's just about there anyway. Okay, I do have a few things to take care of this evening, but we're going to be live much earlier tomorrow. Disease X is still spreading these days. It's misogyny and it's offensive text messages targeting Hispanics, LGBTQ, and blacks. The FBI is apologizing for that. And again, they are bringing out these ideas of like hate influencers like Fuentes who offend everybody, offend the feminists. They're doing this to get the public to acquiesce eventually to censorship, to locking down the internet in the same way we locked down the world in 2020. But they're going to do so for the purposes of quarantining the cyberspace commons from Disease X, which is largely going to be coming from X. And Disease X refers to mind viruses. Mind viruses don't exist, but they convince the public these things exist, and they've trained us on the pandemic model, and they've conflated the two. So the next phase of this entire operation is when they get the public to treat mind viruses as real. Like, oh, we have isolated the mind virus. This can spread and cause violence and real death. And they've been making the case for some time that the mentally ill are dangerous when exposed to certain types of information. So those of us mind virus super spreaders who are asymptomatic and not crazy are in fact great threats to society. So society needs to be protected from us, and we are going to be asked to mask our minds. Okay, we'll continue this tomorrow. Good news again. All the old channels are back on, so I'm curious to see in the comments how many people are still active. And so I'll be looking forward to reading those comments in a follow-up video, likely tomorrow morning, if not later on tonight. This is Auto Hoaxology by Symbia. Thanks, chat, and we'll continue this soon.
I don't believe in chemtrails, I don't live in Truthville. Just because you saw it on the screen doesn't make it real. I don't take the red pill, I don't take the blue pill. I just choose to follow my dreams, auto hoax and chill. I stepped off the world stage and I've moved away from all the fake outrage and the hearsay. And I don't give the time of day to those that naysay, because they got a bad case of the mind day. I stepped away from the game entirely. I won't be caught up in their lame dichotomy. I've stepped away from the cage entirely. I'm free today and my mind's been set by reading out of Occult, out of the control system finally. I know where to go if you follow me, cause I've been reading out of Occult. Nothing can bother me, out of Occult. Won't be the scream before it's blasphemy. I won't become another mind war casualty. I came above the realm of possibility to take the helm of this reality. Cause I've been chillin' reading out of Occult. found the sort of truth. I stopped the backs of deceivers, demanding burdens, further proof from all the hacks and believers. I stepped away from the game entirely. I won't be caught up in the lame dichotomy. I stepped away from the cage entirely. I'm free today and my mind's been saved by reading autoxology. Out of the control system finally. I know where to go if you follow me. Cause I've been reading autoxology. Nothing can bother me. Autoxology. Won't put the screen before it's blasphemy. I won't become another mind war casualty. I came up out the realm of possibility to take the helm of this reality. Cause I've been chillin' reading autoxology. Suspending all the judgment, you won't get a reaction. Won't defend it, I won't budge until I get all the facts in. I won't argue with the bots about the next current thing. Crying over the fake bodies like a bitter death queen.